Okay, broadcast is live. I see the live. Yes, yes. Okay. There you go. Okay, here we go.
Here we go. Welcome,
Yeah.
everyone who is watching and tuning in to us right now live. This is our first live stream on the Lead Skill channel. So we've been going for a couple years now, since 2020 when we started the Lead Skill YouTube channel. And although this is a first effort to do a live stream, it's not the first time that we're having this conversation. Angela and I'll introduce Angela in just a second, were actually started a podcast a year ago, recorded several sessions, never broadcast, never put it out in public. And then at the beginning of the summer season this year, which is, back in May of 2022, we did Twitter Spaces for like 12, 15 episodes. So we did social audio on Twitter, which was a lot of fun. And we had some people, as guests and came in and joined. But all along, I've been thinking, I want to get the message out to more people. And through our YouTube channel, I'm hoping to take the message about leadership, and specifically the self-aware leader, out to a broader audience. And so that's what we're doing. This is the self-aware leader. And our topic today for this pilot episode is emotions at work. So we're going to do this. It'll be a two-parter. We'll do part of it today, and we'll carry over the second part next week on our next live stream. But hey, we're learning as we go along. This is new to us. And so we may have technical glitches. I can almost, promise those. We'll have mistakes, I'm sure, but come along with us for the journey. Help us get better, have fun with us, hang out with us, vibe with us. But we're looking forward to sharing more about self-aware leadership and just keeping it as real as possible, sharing from our own life and from our work with leaders. So let me give a very quick introduction. I've been doing work in the coaching space for about 25 years now. And it got my initial training at Coach University. It's morphed into something else, has a different name these days. But I started working with small business people, and Angela and I did consulting together in a business, market consulting. And then I went into corporate consulting and executive coaching in the early 2000s. So I've worked in several different corporate environments in several different countries, lived in China for a while and worked there, used a set of tools to help leaders get a much quicker and an accurate picture of themselves as well as their team members so that they can move forward with emotional intelligence and things like DISC and people's motivators and other things, competencies. So that's the work that I've been doing. I've been putting out some YouTube videos here for the last couple of years. Angela is the operations lead for Lead Skill, and she does everything in the background, behind the scenes. And besides being a life coach in her own right, a former TV producer, an interviewer of people, loves to do interviews with people and help them tell their story. The most recent thing that's gotten a lot of her attention and energy has been designing things using Canva. And whether that includes videos, she has her own YouTube channel. She has her own web store at simpledailyjoy.com, simpledailyjoystore.com, I should say. She has done a lot of things of like visual design and marketing and working with professionals in that field. And all the pretty stuff, all the great stuff that you see for Lead Skill goes back to Angela. And so, Angela, welcome to this conversation today as we talk about the self-aware leader.
Thanks for having me along. I'm not very comfortable with being on the, in the front, taking the front seat. But one of the things that when you were sharing all of the stuff about the journey that I was present to was how gentle and how kind and how you're a leader, you're a true leader in a sense to me that you, from a work perspective, you knew how hesitant I was in coming on. So we did the podcast where nobody sees me. And then you nudged me along later on and says, let's go live on Twitter Spaces. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, here goes. And I actually have fun of insights because out of working with talking about emotions at work, it spilled over to my design and gave me, thoughtful ideas on how to work differently and design differently and the content I put out. So that was really useful. So it wasn't like uh, something that you took away from me, you added to me. And then now we are doing StreamYard live. So I expect more good things to come. And as yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, if you're watching and you're wondering, so what is this? It's really a video podcast, all right? So we're going to be having a topic where we talk about things around self-aware leadership. And I really wanted to tackle it from kind of the big picture view of emotions at work today. And so we're going to be getting into that topic here in just a second. Angela, thank you for those gracious words. I really appreciate them. And um, you have an eye for marketplace trends. You also are very sensitive, and you have been like a leader to me in even growing in emotional intelligence and learning to like tap into what am I feeling, and how can I better manage all of my jumble of emotions. I have been very repressed. It's been quite a journey coming to a place where I can make this a public thing and talk about it and help others along in the process. And so I have to give a lot of credit in this to you. And I know that you would also say you're learning right alongside with me because you're humble, and that's just who you are. You're someone who um, wants to work in partnership and not necessarily be in the limelight or the spotlight and out front, um, you know, taking all the credit. So I really appreciate that.
It's taken us a while, hasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
by next year, March, we'll be celebrating our 30th wedding marriage anniversary.
Hmm.
We had children much later. Now they're on their own now. But for us, um, when the family came, I took a back seat. There was business 2.0, and now it's business 3.0. And when I say it's taken a while, so if people look at us and they say, "Wow, these are calm people, older people, they're still working together." I think it's taken. When I say it's taken a while, it's because it's taken a while for us to express what works for us
Yeah.
and to also express our emotions and have them be regarded. And it's good to express ourselves fully because then good work gets done. I think that's why I'm really glad that in this phase, in this chapter of your consulting, leadership coaching, training work, that you are bringing the conversation of emotions into the marketplace. Not that
Yeah.
it was absent before, but how do we express ourselves, have a space to share it, and then what do we do? I was just thinking about it today, Ron, my early walk. Like, so what we have a work culture where emotions get expressed. What then?
What then is um, one, we get to show up as more human. Two, if what the experts and the researchers that I've read, if what they say is accurate, and I don't doubt or disbelieve them, it allows for more creativity. It allows for more openness and authentic sharing. It allows us to be more responsive, both to customers or potential customers, clients in the workplace, but also more responsive to one another so that we have a better culture internally within the organization. So there's a lot of benefits from it. But I will also say, you know, there's uh, there are real dangers. There's a reason that over the years, people, it was for a long time kind of a uh, an unwritten and in some places a very explicit rule about don't bring your emotions to work. We don't express our emotions here. And if you stop and think about it, I mean, why would an employee be crying in the bathroom? Why would an employee be crying in the bathroom? Because it's not allowed to be crying out on the floor or at your cubicle or, in the room with other people. So you have to go to a semi-private place like the bathroom to bawl or to cry or to, express yourself. And the fact is that that's still too common today in a lot of workplaces. Although I think it's changing, and you may be in a place where things you can be very expressive, and that's great. I'm happy for you, and I'd love to have you share with us, maybe even give some comments as a guest here in the future. But I want to talk about this, this topic of emotions at work and some of the unwritten rules about, are we allowed to express emotions or feelings at work, and to what degree, how freely? And I think your question about, and to what end, for what purpose, what purpose does it serve? And are those purposes, does it make it worthwhile? Because there's dangers, there's risks involved in opening up and sharing our emotions. Does it really make it worthwhile? Those are all great questions for us to be considering here.
When you mentioned that, I thought about the different times that I work in organizations and institutions where there's the HR department, and I don't remember having a conversation with a HR from the HR department about what's possible, or at least an invitation that if I have something coming up, how should I deal with this? I don't remember being asked that question. And I'm just
Not
given a
just what's possible, but also what's allowed, right?
yes, like a ton of paperwork. So I'm thinking of, like I said, we have children who are all independent right now. So when I thought back about the time when I remember in my 20s, and I had a good mentor friend who was a decade ahead, and she was a very successful corporate executive in the telecommunications industry. And we were having breakfast at 7:20 a.m. And she was, very gracious, had a flight to catch, and brought her breast pump machine along. And I remember asking her, so when do you pump? And she says, oh, in the bathroom in the airport when I'm waiting for my flight. And I remember when I was listening to her, it was nothing because she's such a strong woman. Okay, nothing to it. But I remember thinking, like, is this what I want? when you and I decide to have a family and have kids, where I'm
Mm,
breast pumping in airports, you know, and I'm like, no, Ron, go ahead and do the executive coaching with the corporate companies. I'm going to just stay and run the business at home, taking care of all the administrative affairs. And that was business 2.0 for us.
yeah.
So when you said that more creativity could be expressed, if we could just express what we need, how we feel. Maybe back then, if there was a workplace culture or conversation in society that says, for young moms, we get that you like to pump milk. Okay, and here's a one
Not just
page.
like to, it's a biological need. If a breastfeeding mom is
Work.
she
And you
needs to.
feel it. You feel it. It's like, oh, you've got to go pump it. It's like, you know, and so for someone to just walk me through as a 20 something, that here's what you can do. Here's the nursing room, and it just
Right,
on the fifth floor or something,
right.
and without having me to plug the machine in quiet and go to a bathroom, which on stressful days that could bring tears.
Yeah,
That could bring
yeah,
tears. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So here's the question that comes up for me that I want to kind of have us look at for a few minutes. Why do we avoid talking about emotions at work?
Oh, I
What's
know.
what's really behind that? This isn't class. So what our viewers and watchers, what you may or may not know, you probably don't know this. Angela has a background experience teaching in the classroom. So sometimes that teacher instinct kicks in. So you'll
Not
see
just
it.
that, also from Singapore,
All
Asia,
right.
so very
Yeah, great.
compliant
All
society.
right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Angela.
Oh, several
Why don't we avoid
times,
talking about emotions at work? What's behind that?
several things I could think of. When you're intensely working, when you are working against a deadline or have a project to deliver, and you have
Yeah.
stuff going on, you have to put that aside because the deadline is Tuesday, 4 p.m. So to talk about emotions, like I'm so mad or so angry, it's like, you even though there are people around you who express emotions like that, at least for me, I feel like I'm taking up space because it's not productive. It doesn't reach what we're after at 4 o'clock on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So that was one thing, when you're bumping against a deadline. And another thing,
So
like I said,
so that's actually like it gets in the way of productivity. Is that a way
it's
of
gets in the
summarizing
way
it?
of productivity. And the second thing is, I tend to be, you know, if I'm a junior rank or even if I'm higher rank,
Mhm.
I notice that it's the dominant people with dominant personalities, they get to emote.
Oh, so it's actually an expression of power differences.
They get to emote, but not
Yeah,
me.
only the powerful get the right to express their emotions.
Yeah.
The less powerful is like, nip it, keep it under control,
Yeah. And then when
bite
I'm
your tongue.
higher up, then I get to like just emote all I want.
Oh, that's very interesting, but you're right. You're totally
Mhm,
right. Yeah.
mhm. Which is very immature because we have immature bosses that we look at like, what on earth, and then that's why we have the gossip in the lunchroom and and all that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Any others? You're rolling. This is good.
Um, I'm gonna come up with. What about you? I mean, what have you learned from the field about why have you noticed that people are stilted and not expressing and all that? That's been benefit because when those emotions are not, after the pleasantries, you just go right into work.
So emotions are messy. That's the first thing
Right.
that comes up for me. Emotions are messy. I mean, we don't. I'm going to make one of these broad, general statements that I'm painting with a broad brush. You have to know that. But um, on the whole, uh, emotions can quickly get out of control. We're not that great about regulating them. And there's something about like when we're at work that, a lot's at stake. There's a lot of our self identity that's tied up in our work. And, sometimes we just feel things intensely and emotions can get messy quickly so that it gets out of control. And when people are emoting, it can often shut down like the rational part of what we need to be focusing on to get the work done. So I suppose tied up in that is a couple of concerns. One is the productivity one, again, like what you mentioned, and second would be um, the the concern about it's just going to make people feel uncomfortable or even embarrassed, or it's going to detract from what we're trying to do at work to get the work
Yeah,
done.
yeah. It doesn't make feel professional or look professional. And I get that because now that I'm, a Canva expert in the design space, helping experts bring their content out into the world more widely, I notice that especially, and they come to me is because I am just a few steps ahead and maybe a lot more steps, I don't know, um, in digital skills, the efficiency and the speed that I am
Yeah,
doing the work that I can see, the things when you're in the business, you just see things very quickly.
sure.
And sometimes I hear clients say, oh, this is too much, it's too fast. I'm overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed. And
Hmm.
I love that my clients tell me that. versus being, not saying anything.
Yeah, I'm good, or acting like I'm all good. And you only discover later, sometimes much later, when you can't do anything about it. Wow, they were actually struggling, or they weren't all good.
Yeah. Like, when it takes, someone, like too much time, I'm like, oh, I could have handled it. But if the person would just say, I don't feel, that I could do this. I'm not, I feel overwhelmed.
So
You know,
yeah, and that
it
gets us
doesn't
into
distract me
probably
because this is my lane. The digital skill thing, the design is my lane. So I'm like, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't detract me from having good regard for this person. It's like, I don't know how to, lead or strategize or talk, big, you know, strategy thing. So I'm like, I'm in awe of the clear thinking that the person has with regards to strategic thinking and conversation.
yeah.
But for them to say, I feel overwhelmed in this, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. I feel overwhelmed some things too in other areas, like what you're doing. So
I think, Angela, that it requires a high trust environment in order
mm,
for people to
yeah.
feel safe
Hmm.
to express what they're really feeling.
Hmm.
And let's face it, a lot of workplaces are not high trust environments
Yeah, now that you mention it,
where
yeah.
there's a lot of interpersonal safety, and where it's like, I got your back, and we're helping each other. We're not competing against one another. We're not working at cross purposes. We're not trying to hold on to the last scrap of our self-worth because, we get, you know, decimated. If it's not by angry customers, it's by, a jerk boss, all of that.
So on Instagram, there's a lot of hashtags, and some hashtags sometimes get my attention. And one of the hashtags that got my attention in emotion space is hashtag all emotions are valid.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
When you think about that, hashtag all emotions are valid. I'm like, really? Because in a work culture, only certain emotions are great, like the happy emotions, the positive
Yeah.
vibes only, kind of.
Yeah.
But when you think about this hashtag, all emotions are valid, and really sit and think about that. Wow, if we really truly practice that, we are creating a very high trust culture.
Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right. But I would also say that getting to a place where all emotions are valid, to me, is kind of like, it's not a huge high attainment. It's actually just kind of like uh, a new floor. It's a floor. It's a baseline. And here's what I mean by that. All emotions are valid to me is basically saying, like, if people are feeling it, acknowledge it. They're feeling it. Like, it's valid. If I'm feeling it, if you're feeling it, that's a valid feeling. Now, valid, let's be clear what that means. Valid doesn't mean therefore I have to immediately express it, or I have to emote. Whatever I feel has to come out. That's not what valid means. But valid means that if I'm feeling it, I certainly have the right or the place to feel it or to experience it, and to be sent the message either overtly or by a lot of other, kind of subtle um, messages that, no, you're not really feeling that, or that's not okay to feel that. That's not welcome here. You don't need to feel that. Is invalidating the feeling. It's invalidating the emotion.
I think there is also a misconception that if we acknowledge that all emotions are valid, or we let in the conversation of full expression of emotions into the workplace, is that productivity will drop. But I can attest personally that tending to my emotions and has been very helpful in how I design things. It's almost like the design becomes almost quantum if I when I tend to it. When I
Mhm.
just take a moment to sort of, not sort of, when I take moments to do the breath work that you created or
Mhm.
the emotions wheel that you did, put out in the marketplace during the pandemic year, that's, has been a great resonance in the marketplace.
Mhm.
I remember many, many, many days, months where I will be doing my work and all of a sudden feel this surge of emotions, what I call emotion surge. And I'd be like, okay, let me just finish clicking off this thing, finish thing, and then I'll finish pause. When I see a reasonable place where I can pause, grab my emotion wheel and just look at it and ask, how am I feeling? And then just naming the emotions and then cry. I would just
Yeah.
cry and get myself a cup of hot tea and then return to the work. And when I reflect back on those moments when I did that, and then look at the amount of results I put out there, I was like, wow, I'm glad I took the moment to honor myself by looking at what my emotions were, naming them.
Yeah.
And that was, like you said, it's just the first step, because eventually I also got to see, like, um, with this new space that we're in, burnout. And I've had burnout many times in my life. And at this time, I'm looking at burnout, and there's some more conversation out there in the world right now today talking about burnout. And I thought to myself, like, wow, it's not going away. You know, um, what am I doing to myself such that I do not constantly, if I'm in a burnout mode, what am I doing to myself? So
Mm.
when you say people not having a lot of, don't think of themselves, something about worth, I think maybe 10 minutes ago you said in a part where you said maybe people don't value themselves.
Not
And
having high self-worth, partly because the messages are being sent that, their contribution isn't as valued.
yes, yes. And when I think about it, I was like, I was really doing a lot of good work, but I was so hard on myself that I kept pushing myself. I'm talking about like working till midnight, 1
Yeah.
a.m., 2
Yeah.
a.m.
Yeah.
I was like, of course you're going to burn out,
Yeah.
you know? And there was no pressure from you. It was standards I set on myself. And I realized unplugging is one solution, but how do I navigate for the next decade or 2 decades doing what I love and taking care of myself? And that is why the conversation of EQ is important today.
So you actually started off anticipating this next question that I had, about
Okay.
why is emotional intelligence a valuable skill set in the workforce today? And I think the first thing that you were saying about design, um, started to answer this. And then you were talking about burnout too, I think, as far as avoiding burnout. But um, that I think your first instinct was was a really good one about why is this a valuable skill set. You mentioned in the design field, whenever you're doing something creative, it requires tuning into your emotions.
Mm.
There is a connection between creativity and um, emotional expression or even emotional awareness. Can you say a little more about that for those of us who are a little more design challenged or creatively challenged?
Yes, when you are putting things on paper or digitally right now, you are expressing what you feel inside. So I remember when I decided, um, to do a home birth. One of the first images I had was it was a huge mess, very Jackson Pollock-ish, like, you know, all over. And when I looked
You're not
at
talking
it,
about the birth itself. You're talking about you did some artwork to
I
express
did some
your
whole,
emotions?
exactly.
Okay.
Thank you for
Yeah.
filling in the details because I'm visualizing all the images here.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at it, stepping back, oh wow, is this what I think a home birth is? So, whoa, I was like, maybe I should go to the more clinical, safer hospital route, which I did the interviews of the doctors and hospitals. You and I checked out several
Mhm.
spa-like hospitals. But I really wanted to do a home birth. So, yeah, the first image was this crazy, messy, frightful terrain that I was stepping into. And I had to like, hold up, what do I want? What kind of home birth do I want? And I remember creating one that was really happy. I remember sharing it with someone, and someone said to me, "So you think a home birth's gonna look like this?" Because I was smiling in in this canvas picture I was making. I was like, "Yeah." And she looked at me like, "Wow, you're so innocent and naive." And I looked at her like, you know what? I'm gonna hold that space and birth that way. And both my kids came into the world like that. Beautiful births. And you were
Huh.
there to catch them, right? Just
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, so glad I did
Well,
that.
that's a little different from the workspace. That's definitely, you're talking about home, and I mean, birth is a very creative process. I won't deny that. But I think that's kind of far removed from, unless people are in the healthcare space or they're dealing with, these sort of things. Like, I, I just have to kind of, raise my hand now and say, well,
Okay,
so
please. Sorry.
so no, that's okay. But I mean, emotions at work and why is emotional intelligence desirable skill set? Like, help me out there, because where I saw you going in the beginning with the creativity and with, design work and the link to emotions, I can see that. But I think people who are not doing anything that they would remotely call creative, and they're not doing any design, would say, "Oh, okay, that's great for the artsy people," or of course they're kind of emotional, or if they were snickering, they might say emo, or things like that. But it's like, why is emotional intelligence a desirable skill set for all workers today? That's kind of my bigger question that I want
You
to
need to
look at.
become stronger in saying what you want to other people without having to shout over them, without feeling like you should not be asking for what you want. I think tuning to the emotions within myself. Of course, I give a really dramatic home example of home births. So let me dial back. When I think about
Well,
being on
what you
this,
said just now, that's just practicing civility, just being civil to one another, which I have to say, looking around here in the United States of America in 2022, you know, it's no big, like, aha, no big insight. I'm not dropping any bombs here to say, we've had a huge decline in civility and in practicing civil conversation with one another in the last 10 years or so, the last 5 years. Like, civility itself would be like a huge thing if people were practicing that more at work.
yeah. So when you attune to yourself, your emotions, what you're scared of, what you want, like the images I just pointed out in my home birth journey, I then one of the things I saw when you said civility, I can tell you what, this practice at emotional intelligence for me in my journey, coming from an Asian society that was very conformist, where the dominant voices lead, where government's policies are the say so. Um, it takes it's been a journey for me, and I can tell you what it has done for me. So even when things are not right, I'm willing to interject and speak up. I remember appraisal that I had was very unfair to me. Um, I didn't know how to be PC, or anyway, it was very unfair to me. And it was very clear during the appraisal, this person already had a clear idea of where she wanted to put me in, box me in. And I remember distinctively, it was very hard to listen to all her judgments and conclusions about me, even though I know the work that I've done. And even though she acknowledged it, but it was still the energy that I felt was very unkind and very dismissive. I remember turning to her at the end, Wood, and I said, "Thank you for the evaluation of, and I appreciate the comments given. And just one thing I want to know. What is what is just two things? What are just two things that I did really good, that really pleased you? That was wow." You went, "Wow." Because right now I'm not feeling that everything that I put in is good enough for you. And I don't think you intend it that way. So I'd like to hear from you. It's been really good that I did. And then I remember she was kind of stepped back, was like, "Oh, I don't mean mean that, yeah, all basically blah blah blah, negative, 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 negative." Because that was all the appraisal was, all the negative. But she was able to name a few things. Really, I could see her really, really like having to switch and shift and say it. I went away, um, realizing, okay, yeah, w- that's not an environment that is very nurturing. And I realized that I need to cut my time short here.
Okay.
So I think that made me a more, um, that made me happy as a person, and continue into the next work culture in the next place, more determined to show up as a kind human being, simply because I honor my emotions and simply because I speak up them.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking it just popped in my head, and maybe I should be careful about just expressing things that pop in my head. But I was thinking about there was a commercial. Uh, it's been a while, but it was talking. It was from the California dairy industry of all things, but it was saying happy cows make good milk. And it was basically touting how the dairy farmers were taking good care of their dairy cows, right? That it's because we take good care of our cows. That's why our product is good. But I was thinking to myself, it's a pretty it's not a big stretch, right? It's pretty easy to see. Happy workers produce better work.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking about the scene also. So besides seeing happy cows on a California dairy farm, another image that pops into my head right now is slaves on a Roman galley, chained to their oars, heaving. So whether you
Yeah.
saw Ben Hur, which is an old classic, or Spartacus, or one of these movies about a Roman slave,
Mhm.
you think about these slaves just eking out and just uh, driving at the oars, chained to their oars. It's like they're not very happy people, right? And the only way to get them to work is to have several guards over them with whips, driving them, punishing them, hurting them, so that they will, and if they don't, then you cut them loose and execute them. You throw them overboard so that the rest of the slaves are, frightened and will get to work. And yet, so much uh, at work today, a lot of places still use fear to motivate people. And, you know, here's the thing. If we're not using emotions at work creatively and with some thought, with some design and planning behind it, we're still using emotions at work. It's just that we're using them in a way that degrades productivity and maybe even degrades people.
Say more about that. I mean, what do you mean by it? So you must have a example, or
Well, I mean, just like my example from, the slave galley, but, I don't think that that's an outrageous sort of illustration for people watching this because, I've worked at workplaces, not as a slave, obviously, but I can recall some
you were
working experiences where, you know what? It
slavish.
was like the rules and the constraints placed upon me made me feel left me feeling very, less than free. Like
Yeah,
I'm not able to be my best there. I'm expected to work in this, small constrained space.
yeah.
And I'm not talking about literally a physical space. So I'll just be, let me be very open. Um, when I was in college, I had a job working in an optical store, and I wanted to be back in the lab, grinding lenses and working there. But they put me out on the retail floor, serving customers and selling eyeglasses. And I remember having this assistant, retail manager who she just didn't like me. And besides that, I was, whenever times are slow in the store, when everything had been polished and clean and all that, um, I like to go to the self-study materials and learn more about eyeglasses and optics and things like that. And the store had like a system where you could get, yourself better trained and actually get certified eventually. And I thought, I've always been a lifelong learner, so I love that and I wanted to do it. Well, this assistant manager did not like that I was so, that I was really applying myself to the learning, because here's the problem. I was moving forward through the training process at my own pace faster than some of the people who had been hired before me, especially people that this manager favored. She was much closer to them and liked them, and she didn't like the fact that I was moving ahead of them, and therefore, the company was going to have to give acknowledgement to me and, pay me better, and it was just causing problems for her. So she often would do things that I'd call make work. It's like I'd already polished eyeglass case, and she wanted me to go back and do it again. Or it's like, okay, go vacuum the floor. And I was like, which is vacuum, and it's not even dirty. But it's like she would make up work for me to do that was junk work. It wasn't, real, so that I wouldn't be able to do self-study and move through the process ahead of her favorites. And so I felt very constrained in that work. And it was like, not like a slave on the galley ship, but it was very unsatisfying. And it took away something that I found naturally motivating, which is I like to learn, at work. I like to always be, pushing the edges. And so that was just a drudgery. It got to where it wasn't fun. And she actually, wrote me up on something that was very minor and was kind of out to get me. And eventually I just decided, this isn't the place for me. I can go elsewhere. And so I left.
Knowing what you know now, and we will do a mapping of your how you get emotions to work for you. First of all, you got to be present and willing to feel your emotions, name them, and then express them and
Yeah.
ask for things that honor you as well as the other person. So, knowing what you know, what would you say to, how would you do differently to, if we do a time travel back, knowing that you have these tools today now, the journey you've gone on? Because I reckon that probably, since this is on YouTube, is this YouTube? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There might be young people who are in that situation, not mid-level management or high management, caught in very talented, but caught in a situation where the bosses and supervisors um, uh, for reasons of their own, you know, not able to develop their people's potential. What would you say? How would you get your emotions to work for you to help you further back then?
Um, at that point, I mean, this wasn't a career. This wasn't like where I was headed in life, and it was a way to, make money. But it was also, across town, there was some disadvantages, some downside to it too. So to try to optimize or make this place work or give myself like coaching now based on what I learned, I don't, it's a pretty big stretch for me to try to think about, what would I say to that person besides like, get out. It's
Talking
like,
to yourself,
if
yeah.
you're that
Talking,
frustrated, if
yeah.
it's a frustrating place
Mhm.
and you're not, going to be valued,
Yeah.
the manager's playing favorites. Now the her manager, the boss over her, was a much more reasonable person, and when she was around, I enjoyed the work. But when I had to work with the assistant manager and she was in charge, it was just like, it's frustrating. So, it's like, I think there's a lesson there about, and Gallup came up with this too. I think there's a classic book by Marcus Buckingham called, First Break All the Rules. But that's kind of a misnamed book because the better title for that should be, It's the Manager, Dummy. Because what Gallup found was the great majority of time, the reason people resign or leave a job is because of their manager, is because they hate working for the manager, or the manager makes it difficult for them to do their job. And that was certainly my experience in that eyeglass shop. So emotional tools, I don't think there's a need. I didn't need to cope because I wasn't in a situation where I had to have that particular job and there were no other options. I was in a 10-person town and there was one business, and that's all. That's all for my livelihood. I wasn't in that kind of situation, so it wasn't necessary to find a way to cope. So I'm not sure how to answer your
Yeah, in
question.
our world today, things have changed because right now you said about like, honor yourself, like get out. The
Right.
environment is not positive. So that was
Right.
good. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
And
And
if someone
I,
feels trapped, or if someone feels like they have no options, no choice to go anywhere else, emotional intelligence, it can help you to cope, just like taking medication or, drugs for a condition, a chronic condition. But better is to treat the underlying causes. Like, okay, fine, especially in today's world, there are options. There are other places. And that doesn't mean it's always immediate or that you can get out of your situation right away. I know, there's circumstances, and sometimes people are trapped. I'm thinking, for example, Angela, and you know this well, some people are in a family business, and it's like, wow, I'm in a family business and it's hard. I can't leave without really, it's like it's gonna cost me in terms of the relationships with my family members to get out of this situation, even if you're being mistreated or, treated very badly. But, you know, that I would acknowledge that, I have empathy for the people stuck in less than desirable situations and who feel like there's really no way out.
for the self-aware leader, what do you propose that they be mindful of or watch out when you have employees in those situations
The
where
great
they
majority of leaders and managers, people who have responsibility for others, the great majority are clueless and have no idea the things that they're doing that are making it difficult for people that they manage or that they lead. And so the first thing to say about the self-aware leader is you really have to be willing to look at the possibility that you're not as good as you think you are. You have to actively question your own biases, that you have filters. You filter information so that you only pay attention to the stuff that reinforces the messages, I'm a pretty good leader, and that you actively discount the negative information that might undermine that self-image of yourself. The reason I say this is not just through experience, but also researchers have shown it's called the better than average effect. In any group, the great majority of leaders especially think that they're better than average. Somewhere to the order of 80 to 90% of people think they are better than average. But you and I both know enough math that it's like that's statistically impossible. 50% of people are below average. And in any population, any group of managers, if I were speaking to, if I were giving a TED talk to an auditorium full of 500 managers, 250 of those are going to be average or below average. But I can tell you about 475 of them are going to think that they're above average. And the other 25 might have a shred of self-awareness or a little bit of humility and have an inkling that they may not have it all together and they've got a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
The first
You talk,
item of business is to acknowledge I probably am not seeing things accurately as a leader, and I need to get some self-awareness. And part of self-awareness is not just looking inside at what I think of me, but it's also looking at what other people think of me, seeing what I look like in the eyes of other people.
yeah. I think this is our business 3.0. In business 2.0, I think we did a lot more ontological work, and do break about quantum projects and like that. So when you talk about right now about being self-aware, I'm learning alongside with you how to become more self-aware. When you mentioned just now about me involved in the web development work, working with, um, people dealing with technical issues, and I notice when when I have to watch myself not to be put to give busy work, because for me it's like, well, that's better than nothing, right? At least people are being productive on my, because I'm paying, right? and then, but I recognize also the limited success that kind of busy work, so-called productivity, brings. So I have to step up and ask myself, well, if the person is getting marching orders from me, what can I come up with as far as a question that is challenging for them to solve, that they enjoy? It's way out of my league, but it's fun for them. So I'm continually just observing signs, the way how work is being turned in, being more attuned to how the person is coming across to me. And I guess that's been valuable for me, working with people who are technical. Really pausing, just like, and asking myself the question, is the person really enjoying the work? Like you said, happy cows make happy milk, something like
Happy cows make better milk, yes.
that. Make better milk, that's right. Just because, even in the field like technical coding, and all that, there's creativity in it. And if the person can solve a really difficult one line code that I'm like is complete gibberish for me, but they're able to go into all these forums and find out the solution and give it to me, I feel like i'm I'm happy when they're willing to go beyond and find a solution versus like, okay, what do you want me to do today? Yeah. So I hope this has been a useful conversation on the value of emotions at work. Thank you for leading this space. Um, my takeaway has been it is valuable because it fosters creativity. I never thought of it that way, because I used to think like, wow, I wish I'm not so emotional.
Yeah.
If I have it down, not emotion, just have a little bit, kind of like
Yeah.
just like a spigot, just have it, just open it a little bit, then I'll be really productive. So if I could just keep my emotions in check.
Yeah.
But I found that it's been very difficult. Sometimes my emotion, like I said, just come and it's surge. I just can't help it. And I just have to let it be. And then it's like, and then there'll be many, and then let it be, let it, and then I'm like, I'm okay. And then I'll be like super productive. I'm like superhero productive, you know.
So
It's just, yeah.
here's the thing that I take away, and I also kind of want to tee things up for next week, our next conversation on this, which I'd call part two, emotions at work. So when the message is sent either overtly or subtly through indirect means that we don't really want you to bring your emotions to work, what most companies are saying is we don't want you to bring your negative emotions to work, right?
Yeah.
And so what that tends to lead to is environments of what we'd call a toxic positivity, where it's like we only want the good stuff, we only want positive emotions, and so you can only be happy, or if you're not going to be happy, at least you can't show your frown and your active disengagement, dissatisfaction. So don't bring your emotions to work means don't bring your negative emotions to work. But by the way, don't bring your over the top positive emotions either. We don't want people who are like, just way off the charts, crazy, happy, euphoric, that sort of thing, just, out of control. So what it means is it's back to the Roman galley, the slave ship. We want your emotions to show up on this narrow band of like, not negative, but positive, but not too positive. And so it's like, it was very controlled. And I want us to take a look at that, especially self-aware leaders. I
Mhm.
want us to examine what is the emotional culture that we are creating, either intentionally and consciously or unintentionally and unconsciously
Mm.
through our own leadership at work. We'll come back to that next week and investigate it a little bit further. I think for now, some of the things that we've talked about is emotional intelligence can be a good thing. It can lead to greater empathy and connection with customers, more responsiveness, more ability to sense where the market is going, and design things, products, provide services that are fulfilling market needs. That's better empathy. It's going to create a better morale and an environment, a culture where people want to work, where they want to show up for work, where people are motivated. And we don't have to be driving them like the Roman centurions with the whips, down in the slave, galley.
And there
That
are,
image has really stuck with me today, if you can't tell.
yeah, and there are. I hold a space that many employers, many leaders, they want to create a world where people look forward to contributing. People want to
Yeah.
contribute.
Yeah.
They're always looking for solutions, or even, I love it when it's when it's something, because as a leader, there are so many things that come that you are responsible for. I love it when someone is looking out for you and thinking of an angle, or something to contribute to the table without you even asking for it.
Yeah.
So
Isn't that great?
yeah, and we want that kind of climate for
You do
everyone.
that. You do that a lot for lead skill. You bring things without being asked, and you just anticipate needs. Like, little call out here. We're doing this right now on StreamYard versus Zoom because you sent that, this morning and suggested, hey, StreamYard, we should do that. And I originally thought about doing it on a Zoom call. And here we learned something new, and we're doing something new, and you anticipated it without being asked. So, that's an example, I think, of EQ at work and showing some initiative.
And I certainly appreciate your willingness um, to say yes.
thanks for joining us today. And we're going to wrap up the stream now. So thanks for tuning in and hope it's been useful. Give us a comment. Love to see that. Drop us a line. You can reach us at leadskill.com. You can find that in the About page on our YouTube channel page. But we'd love to hear from you. And let us know what you'd like to hear about in future episodes coming up on the Self-Aware Leader. All right, here's where I should cue our jingly, outro
We don't
music,
have one yet.
which we don't have yet. So we need to work on that. But thanks for joining us,
Yeah.
and we'll catch up with you next time.
All right. Bye.